On today's show, the Hawks lose a heartbreaker by 1 point in the final seconds against the Detroit Pistons on the road. We'll get into all of what transpired, a rough start, a nice recovery, and a competitive game on the whole, and all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1841 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Friday evening into Saturday here in the middle of November. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app right now today and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. I also want to say at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Please check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcast. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're also on YouTube. Please like this video as you are watching it. And I appreciate you being here on the podcast today. I'm coming to you live from Detroit after a 1-point loss for the Hawks on the road in Detroit by a final score of 122 to 121. And definitely an interesting game. The second time this year, the Hawks had the ball down by 2 points or less in the final seconds and couldn't quite pull it out. They were truly awful in the first half, or at least most of the first half of this game, as we'll come back to repeatedly on this episode. They were down by as many as 24 points in the first half, and basically everything went wrong for about 16 minutes of this game. They did claw back, got to 13 by halftime to kind of get back into the game. They were really resilient, and I think that was encouraging to see throughout this contest. Quinn Snyder was talking about this post-game. They were really good for the last 2.5 quarters, basically. They tied it in the fourth quarter a couple times. They took the lead exactly once in this game by lots of free throws by Trae Young in the final minute. Then Kate Cunningham gave the Pistons the lead and then blocked Okongwu at the buzzer to preserve the win for Detroit and send the Hawks home with a 4-6 record on the young season. So before I get into the offensive and defensive breakdowns that I always do on the whole of this game, it is just kind of logical to boil this game down a little bit to the big picture of what transpired as far as the first half and second half splits. So after about 16 minutes of game time, it was 55-31 in favor of the Pistons. If you didn't watch the game, it felt that way too. It didn't feel fluky necessarily at that point in time. The Hawks did not play well at all in the first quarter plus. Then the rest of the game, 32 minutes, the Hawks won this game, at least that segment of the game, by 23 points and played very well. But you can't be down by 24 points after 60 minutes of basketball. That's the reality. The Hawks were bad enough in the first beginning of this game that they just couldn't overcome that. So Quinn, post-game, talked about this all as you might expect, kind of noted the mistakes in the first quarter plus. He focused on the defensive side of the ball, and that's definitely fair, but it was certainly a two-way street offensively and defensively. I could basically just say that and then sign the podcast off. Like, it was very obvious to anyone watching the Hawks were terrible at the outset. And then I'll just say this, they played at basically an elite level for the last 2.5 quarters of this game. To be down by that much and then beat this Pistons team. And this Pistons team is, by the way, not your older brothers Pistons. They're not great by any means, but they're not as bad as they've been in recent years. To win the rest of the game by that margin was impressive, but both things can be true. They were bad enough in the first part and good enough in the second part. And honestly, the game was really lost in the first 16 minutes. Like, people always say you can't win a game in the beginning, but you can lose it. That was definitely the case here. They lost the game really big picture in the first 16 minutes of this game. And there you go. So with that out of the way, I'll talk about the defense first, I suppose, of the two sides of the ball. They had a 115 defensive rating in this game. That was very bad early on, like everything was, and then it was actually quite good after halftime. The rebounding was the same. I talked about it a little bit in my newsletter for Locked On Hawks, actually on Thursday, and then in pregame I actually asked Quinn Snyder about this, but the rebounding battle was interesting to me because the Pistons were actually number one in the entire NBA in rebound rate coming into the game tonight. Offensive, defensive, combined rebounding. For the whole game, the Hawks had about a 67% defensive rebound rate in this game. That's actually quite bad. But in the second half, the Hawks got 80% of the available defensive rebounds. So it was not really an issue once they actually figured it out. But in the early going, that did lead to some issues with the Pistons when they actually did miss some shots, which is kind of rare in the beginning. In fact, they shot the ball well the entire game. The Pistons shot 39% from three and about 55, 60% plus from 2-point range, leading to 51% from the floor in the game on the whole. The Hawks did force 21 turnovers in this game. That's been a theme this year about havoc creation has been a positive. They had 12 steals in this game. as well. And they were better on offense, I thought, though, the defense overall in this game. And we'll come back to this in a second. The offense was not great, but as far as like the process, what I care about, like what is actually, process over results, making the right play, taking the right shots, winning on the margins, etc. They were better offensively than defensively in this game, even if it was kind of a low bar to clear for most of the game. Speaking of the offense, they had about a 113 offensive rating in the game. It was ghastly early on, as it was defensively. In fact, Quinn just kind of just rattled off the points scored per quarter post game by that big 40 number in the first quarter from the Pistons offensively. It was the same on offense for the Hawks. They had 23 points in the first quarter, and they actually scored 30 points or more in all of the last three, and it felt that way. They just didn't make shots for large portions of the game, honestly. They did shoot well from three in the end, 15 of 36, but that's because they shot 10 of 19 from three after halftime, after 5 of 17 in the first half. So it was a tale of two halves there, but they were under 50%, I should say, on twos in this game. They made less than half of their 2-point attempts, including a bunch of shots at the rim in this one. They were in the 33rd percentile in rim accuracy in this game. They were in the 29th percentile on floater accuracy in this game. And that combination means that they just were not making enough shots around the rim, both at the rim and in that like 5 to 7 foot range of the floaters. Dyson missed a bunch of shots there. So did Okongwu a couple times. Trae wasn't his absolute best inside the arc in this game. Jalen missed ones that he would like to get back, I would imagine. So lots of missed opportunities across the board. And that was one that I want to at least circle there. They ended up winning the glass overall, which is actually kind of crazy after the way this game started. And they won the turnover battle as well in this game. So they were actually winning on the margins. And I think the shot quality was pretty good on the whole in this game. They just didn't make a ton of the 2-point shots early and often. But they ended up actually winning three-point line in this game, which is kind of shocking after the game began. But one final note before I dive into the rest of the game is sort of more granular fashion. The Hawks were in Trae Young minutes in this game plus 14 in 41 minutes. So for one, that's a lot of minutes for Trae to play on the first night of a back-to-back. But it was because of the way things went when he was off the floor. So they were plus 14 in Trae's minutes. They were minus 15 in 7 minutes without Trae in this game. And if you watch them, it wasn't a fluke. They couldn't get into the offense with Trae off the floor really at all. The Pistons were, to their credit, taking advantage of Trae not being there, pressuring up on Keaton, pressuring up on the ball handlers. It just was not working. And then while Trae does not save the defense, that led to easy plays for the offense for the Pistons. So that's not a huge, it's not always been that stark this year, but it's been a theme for years now, especially, with Bogey out, with Buchan out, etc. Keaton Wallace has done his job, but so far, tonight was kind of when things crested a little bit as far as the Hawks being, on paper, quite good with Trae on the floor, and then really, really dire with Trae off the court. And it's one game, but that was definitely part of the story in this game as well. All right, we'll get into the big picture of this one. I'll just say this before I dive into kind of the nuts and bolts here. This is a loss that's frustrating, just to say that out loud. It is. This is not like losing to a Pistons team in previous years. In fact, the Hawks actually covered the spread in this game. They were 2-point underdogs at tip-off at FanDuel. People were surprised by that. The Pistons are better than they've been for a while, and the game was on the road. That's why that is. But that's not going to be always the end-all be-all. But the Hawks were not embarrassing in this game outside of the first 16 minutes. So as far as anger levels or whatever, I think the Hawks can be encouraged, and Quinn was encouraged post-game about how they played once the disaster start happened. But it's all fair. This is a professional basketball game, and all 48 minutes count, and they were really bad in the first quarter plus, and that's frustrating, I'm sure, for everybody involved. All right, we'll dive in now to the play-by-play stuff as far as my observations throughout this contest. And at the end of the podcast, we'll also get into my player-by-player evaluations, breaking down all the guys who appeared for the Hawks in this game. First, though, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot at winning up to 100 times the cash. Run your game all season long at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money during the basketball season. Which players are going off? Which ones are not going to go off? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds as well, and turn sports opinions into real money all season long at PrizePicks. Sign up right now today. $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even actually have to win to receive that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed for you when you play at PrizePicks. And they play, you remember, they're members first at PrizePicks as well. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you get the money actually in your account as fast as 15 minutes. PrizePicks is also embedding the flex play, which means you still get to cash out if your lineup is not perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. Download the PrizePicks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONNBA in the PrizePicks app to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to check out the NFL and NBA action this season at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and right now, if you are a new customer, you can bet $5 and get $150. That's $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is easy to use. It gives you everything that you actually need to place your bets all in one place. And they have all stuff that you're looking for across the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, player props and game props, future bets, same-game parlays, live betting, and so much more. The app is definitely safe, and it's definitely secure as well. They cover the entire range of sports, and that includes the NBA, of course, as we talk about in this podcast all the time, but they also have the NFL, college football, baseball, WNBA, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so many more sports are available there for you at FanDuel. And now is an awesome time to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to get started with $150. Yes, $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com and $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we'll dive in now to what transpired in early going. I know I gave all the caveats earlier. The Pistons scored on their first 8 possessions of the game. One more time. They scored on their first 8 possessions of the game, including a couple of threes. They actually scored 18 points on their first 8 possessions. That's a poor start. And when that ended, the Hawks were down by 11 points in about 4 minutes. The Pistons only missed one shot in that span, and they got the rebound and then scored. Offensively, it wasn't as awful as that, but they missed some free throws early on. They had an offensive goaltending violation on Reece Shea. It was a perfect storm at the outset. They did play a little bit better from there, I will say. After Steiner called timeout, they just couldn't make a shot throughout this one. I think they missed 5 shots at the rim in the first 6 minutes of this game, and Detroit was still red hot. The Hawks missed everything. A couple nice passes that were kind of just left for naught. One from Reece Shea, a couple from Trae. They just weren't finished by supporting teammates. It was just a disaster overall, really. Even when they would have a couple of nice moments strung together, it would run back up immediately after a couple of woeful trips on the court, and they were down 17 points at the end of the first quarter. Really, it was probably their worst quarter of the season, I would say, when you adjust for opponent. And, obviously they had some more fun against Boston, for instance, and Oklahoma City in the fourth quarter. But I think given all of the factors in play, probably their worst performance over a 16-minute sample this year. The final count in the first quarter was they were 8 of 26 from the field, including 5 of 13 within 10 feet. Tough scene there. 5 turnovers. Pistons were good. They were hot from the floor, et cetera, et cetera. Rotationally, there actually was one intriguing change in this game, but it was not for a while. So the first quarter, it was rotation the Hawks have been using for a while now. The starters, and then the backups being Keaton Wallace at the point when Trae sits, Garrison Matthews, David Roddy as backup 4, and then Onyeka Okongwu as backup 5. But they came out of the first quarter, as bad as it was, and played Larry Nance Jr. at center. That was his first time in a game this year playing center when both Capella and Okongwu were active and available. Okongwu did not play much at all in this game. He played 17 minutes, including closing the game. But that was interesting. I wonder if Quinn would have done that if they hadn't been down 17 points. I asked about playing Larry post game, and Quinn basically said it was kind of a matchup thing to some degree, trying to give some more space on their short roll stuff. Not Trae was being trapped some in this game. That made sense as a changeup, but as he did say post game, kind of slipped it in there when I asked that question. They find it difficult to play all 3 of them, which has been evident this year. So I don't know what that's going to be moving forward. He played some in the second half. In fact, I know fans wanted to see him play more in the second half, but they did make that change along the way. The peak of the disaster class was basically this 9-2 run in the second quarter to have the Hawks down by 24 points after about 16 minutes of play. And most of it was defensively just really rough, but even offensively, it was disastrous. They were giving up an offensive rebound on more than half of the misses for Detroit for well over a quarter in this game. And really no one was good, but they got absolutely destroyed without Trae on the court in both halves, which I mentioned before with the minus 15, but it was both times that he sat. It was just a train wreck, basically, when he sat on the bench. They did have finally some life from there. A 13-2 run when Trae re-entered the game. They had a steal and a three-point play by Garrison Matthews. Trae had a couple layups. He was really good in this game. Dyson had a steal to create a fast break. I would say, though, right on cue when the Hawks made the run, Detroit made 3 contested threes, basically in like a 2-minute period to kind of stop the bleeding a little bit on their side. Quinn had kind of a desperation challenge. I think that Jalen got called for a charge in the final minute of the first half. Quinn went and asked his staff very obviously if they should challenge. They clearly told him no. Jalen was pleading for it. Quinn ended up challenging, I think, knowing he was going to lose, just to kind of get his guys back a little bit. That's the feeling that I had being there. But anyway, they lost that challenge. They did hit a lob from Trae to Jalen at the end of the first half to get it down to 13 at halftime. Trae had 18 in the first half. He was easily their best player. The only bright spot was the work in transition in this game. 15 fast break points, and they did have that in the first half, but only a 59 offensive rating before halftime in the half court. They just could not score when the game was slowing down, including 11 turnovers in the first half. Second half was much better, let's just say. Trae scored 7 in the first 9 points to begin the half. He had 25 at that point, and they were really flying high. I thought they might actually skip David Roddy altogether after halftime because he was so bad in the first half. He was better after halftime, to his credit, but defensively it was not fantastic, let's just say. He had a ghastly turnover right away in the third quarter, actually. Jalen came alive in the third quarter. That was a big part of the Hawks' comeback effort. He had 12 points, like a 6-minute span in the third. Much more assertive after a brutal start to the game. They did play Nance 2 more times. McConnell got 3 fouls in a short period of time. They did have Capella at the table in the second half and then pulled him back because Nance actually had a big stretch in the fourth. But they played Larry a lot more in the second half than they were probably going to, I think, when that was going on. And then the other missed opportunity in this game beyond the first half was the close to the third quarter with the bench on the floor. As I said before, Trae being on the bench in this game was a disaster, but the Pistons scored the final 7 points in the third quarter, and it was similar to the first half. They just couldn't even get into a set with Trae on the bench. Like, it was really, really rough, plus a couple of gaffes, like, mishandling the ball, bad passes, etc. It was tough at the end of the quarter, and after getting down to as many as 3, it was 10 again at the end of the third. They had kind of a dry spell early on in the fourth, and they were down by 14 again in the fourth quarter. But then things started rolling well. They played Nance. It was 8-0 run behind Trae and Nance. Trae had a 3, and then Malik Beasley kind of bizarrely went at Trae a few times as if he was stopping him defensively when he obviously wasn't. That was a little back and forth. And in fact, Trae got pretty clear, like either hit or clawed or something like that in the face. He has a pretty visible set of red marks on his face that he attributed to Beasley. I'm not sure exactly when in the second half, but that was one. And Trae made sure to say that it was not a foul. At least it was not called a foul when it was given to him that way. But then Nance had one big dunk, and then he actually hit a quarter 3. He was really good offensively in the second half. I thought Cade was really good for Detroit, which kind of made things difficult for Atlanta. Nance, though, while his offense was really good in this game, defensively it was tough for Larry, especially the Larry Nance, David Roddy front court is just untenable. That was never going to work defensively. It did work on offense, but it didn't really close the gap too much in this game. Like, Nance is actually only was dead even. That's actually better than most guys were, plus minus wise, but it wasn't like they were blowing them out with them on the court, even if it kind of felt like that way on offense a little bit. But they had a 7-0 run to tie the game finally after all of that. They had not tied the game since it was 0-0. And then Trae had a huge step back 3. Dyson ties it with a layup with 3.5 minutes to go. It's a new game. But then, of course, back-to-back threes by Detroit right after that. Actually, a 3 by Harris and a 3-point play by Jaden Ivey. It was back and forth from there. Jalen missed I think the Hawks had 3 straight missed possessions where they missed makeable shots around the rim. Jalen had like a 5-footer that was wide open. He just missed it. That was the story of the night in some ways for Atlanta. But then a big shot by Dyson Daniels, down 4, hit a corner 3 that Trae set up with about 40 seconds to go or so. Then Dyson got to actually force a tough shot on Cade defensively. Trae draws a foul on the lane, gets to the line, makes both, and the Hawks had their first lead of the entire game with 12 seconds left in the game. Then things got interesting. So after timeout, Detroit ran a great action, I thought, actually. They got Cade going to the rim. He had a pretty tough lefty runner off the glass for the lead, but he also went very fast. So it was only like a 4-second play, which helped the Hawks in some respects. Now, one note that I'll make here that I actually made in real time was that the Hawks came out of that stoppage defensively with Garrison Matthews on the court. Now, Garrison competes defensively. He was really good, I thought, Wednesday on defense. But it is curious to have him on the court on a defense on the possession at the end of a game. especially with Ricochet available. Now, Ricochet was not very good in this game, but he is a better defender and obviously has more size than Garrison. So that was a little bit questionable to me. If you watched it, it wasn't necessarily the reason that Detroit scored, but I always wanted to note that because I didn't love it, and also he didn't really give any help at all on the play. So maybe Ricochet could have done that. They also had Trae out there, which I understand that people sort of ask the same question. The gap there is that Trae is a superstar, of course, but also if you get a stop there and there's enough time, you want to get the ball to Trae to handle the ball for you and go to the line, for instance, at the end of the game. I think Garrison can't go to the line for you, but not as a ball handler. So anyway, I didn't love that. Just want to put that out. And then at the end of the game, the Hawks down by 1 there after K makes that shot with about 8.5 seconds to go. Inexplicably, the Hawks threw the ball in 65 feet from the rim, I would say. And Trae took a little bit longer than I would have wanted to in that spot. Now, it didn't fail in that way, like his actual movement didn't fail, but I didn't love the process of throwing the ball that far back with that little time and having to kind of make him go quickly. But he did beat Jaden Ivey off the dribble, drew a double team, made the right play, found a Kongwu. Kongwu kind of gathered the ball a little bit. K was able to recover from the back and then block it from behind. Number one, it was a good play by K. That's just what it was. If Kongwu had more time, maybe he pump fakes and draws a foul, or maybe he could have gone quicker. If he kept the ball high, he kind of gathered a little bit lower than you would have maybe wanted to in that moment. Also, my friend Kevin Chenard of Hawks.com noted this. I think he's right, by the way, that Jaden Ivey, who was coming off of Trae, kind of bumped Kongwu with his hip when he first got the ball, which might have thrown him for a loop a little bit in that same spot. Also, Trae said postgame when I actually asked about this, Trae said that maybe he could have gotten another foul drawn once he got a guy sort of in the air. It wasn't an egregious play. I think Trae made the right play. Kongwu, did what he normally would do there and tried to finish it. It took a lot of things to go wrong in that moment for the Pistons to make the stop. But anyway, I didn't love it, but it wasn't like awful process. It was a decent execution of the play. It just didn't work. And the Hawks, again, one more time here, they had chances in the second half of this game. They could have won it more comfortably, let's just say. But big picture, whether you want to sort of dissect the final plays of the game, Nance played a lot at the end. They went to a Kongwu with 5 minutes to go or so. I'm not sure what that was. That decision is not like one that I hated in the moment, but then people I've been calling for like more flexibility. They went away from Clint, and that was the right decision, I thought. I don't think Capella was very good in this game, although he has some strengths. But I had no issue with him going back to a Kongwu, but that's a question that you have to answer at some point in time, etc. But for me, it's not irrelevant, but I do think that the game was won and lost in the first 16 minutes of the game. And I think the Hawks knew that. Post-game, that was the feeling that everybody kind of said, not explicitly like that, but like, hey, you can't be down this much at the beginning of the game. That was the big story of the night, and we'll leave it there for now. All right, more to come in a second when it comes to my player evaluations of this game. But first, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is sponsored by SKIMS. We all wear underwear every day, but I have to admit that I haven't always thought about my choices in that department a ton on a regular basis. I know I'm not alone in that probably, and I'm sure there's people around me in my life that have not even thought about this stuff and switched it up since college, perhaps. But for those of you that have not heard yet, SKIMS now offers men's underwear, and I'm here to tell you that it's worth the hype. They have classic cotton essentials for comfortable everyday wear, and they also have stretch options that are lightweight and never lose their shape, plus a SKIMS Sport collection of lightly compressive base layers engineered to sit seamlessly under workout clothes for maximum comfort and support. Whether you are a workout warrior or just want to feel good every single day, SKIMS has the options that you are looking for in the underwear space. I can tell you right now, the reviews are absolutely fantastic for SKIMS. You'll be feeling great when you check out SKIMS right now. Shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com. Yes, it's SKIMS, SKIMS.com, and let them know that we sent you to them. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select the show that is Locked on Hawks, of course, in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gift for the whole family, SKIMS also just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. It's also available at skims.com. That is skims.com. One more time, check it all out right now at skims.com. All right, we'll dive in now to the players who appeared in this one. And at the beginning, though, I want to say the guys who did not appear. So it was DeAndre Hunter's 8th consecutive missed game. People ask about this. Hunter did not make the trip to Atlanta. I'm not sure if that's reporting or not, but he was not there. We'll see if he plays on Saturday. I said this a little bit today. Like the Hawks have some cover on DeAndre because it was a back-to-back. The real pain point is Saturday. If he doesn't play Saturday, it'll be more alarm bells on Hunter, in my opinion. after he had been upgraded to questionable on Wednesday, didn't play. We'll see if he plays on Saturday. That's one to circle. I thought there was no way he was ever going to play today on a back-to-back anyway, so there you go. Plus no Buffkin and Krejci, and of course Bogdanovich is the biggest absence that they have at this point. Anyway, there were 10 guys that played for Atlanta, the usual 9 recently, plus Nance. Keaton Wallace that had probably his roughest game so far in the rotation. Not necessarily all his fault, but he offensively just wasn't up to it in this game as an initiator. Did have a block defensively, was fine defensively, but just didn't have a great game in 7 minutes. Not all him by any means, but he was not great in this one. Roddy played 16 minutes, 3 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. 3 turnovers, and I think they were all bad, like all really bad turnovers. Like it was weird. Defensively, he was not good. I think they actually ended up winning those minutes with Nance and Roddy, but it was defensively it was just untenable in that stretch. I thought they probably should have gone to Nance at the 4 at some point in place of Roddy because that's how rough Roddy was in the first half. But same story. He's a skilled guy, but defensively, he's just giving a lot back at this point. Nance took 5 shots, made all of them, including 3 threes. It was ridiculous as an offensive player, 13 points. But I say all that, it's kind of telling to me that they were still only even in those minutes because defensively he was not the same kind of resistance that Okongwu and even Clint were in this game. But offensively, he makes things easier. Like that's the thing. I think Quinn said it. I think even Trae said it. Like all 3 of our centers, that's a quote from Trae or something approaching a quote, like have different skill sets, and it's 100% true. Offensively, things are just flying a lot better when you have Nance to make decisions, to press the floor, etc. But defensively, like Capella is a lot better than Nance. So, and then Okongwu was kind of like in the middle of both. And they had decisions to make every night. But Quinn was at least flexible on that front in this game. And then you have Okongwu was okay, 8 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, had a block, had the last shot blocked, of course, by Cade. I thought he was okay before that. It wasn't great, but played fine, I thought, in his 17 minutes of play. To the starters, Capella played 19 minutes only because he never came back in the second half. Basically, he played the first half, the first end of the third quarter, and that was it for him, which was fine. I don't think that was bad. His finishing, let's just say, regressed in this one. He actually had shot 82% from the field in the last 6 games before today, and then promptly was 3 of 10 in this one. 12 rebounds, was actually very effective there on the glass. Did have 2 assists as well, but offensively as a finisher, it was pretty rough. And then defensively, he was in this drop coverage that was being exploited a little bit by Detroit. It's not his decision, but like the drop wasn't working in this game. So he was very good on Wednesday. He was not as good today. That's kind of life in 2024 for Capella and all that experience. Richache had quite a fall, of course, from his breakout game on Wednesday. I think everyone said this, including me, like he's not going to be doing that all the time, but he was not the same guy today. 7 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists for Richache, 25 minutes. I would have liked to see them go back to him at some point late, but they didn't do that. I don't know if it was back-to-back management or what, but he didn't play a ton in the second half of this game. Jalen, 20 points, 9 rebounds for Johnson. Only 1 assist, though. He actually was only 6 of 13 on twos. He was really good in the third quarter, and the rest of the game was just kind of so-so. I think he was kind of passive. He did turn the light on a little bit in the third, but defensively, it was a rough one for Jalen, I thought, and in general was not his best self. The backcourt throw was awesome. So Dyson Daniels had a very interesting game. 18 points. That is a tie of his career high. 7 steals. That is a new career high for Dyson. Had 2 blocks, 2 assists, 3 rebounds. He had a career high with 17 field goal attempts, which I actually asked him about post-game, and he was talking about how they just want to be aggressive. Like, he clearly is making it a point to be aggressive. He used actually a reference to helping Trae by giving him somewhere else to have an outlet, etc. I think Dyson has been aggressive. The unfortunate part of this game was that he did not have his floater going. There's been, of course, a lot made about his perimeter shooting, which is justifiable. It's a big question mark, but the floater was what he was missing in this game. He was not terribly inefficient. It's 18 points on 18 shots, but just kind of a couple of weird misses around the rim. But still, defensively, it was awesome. Obviously got beat by Cade on the last possession, but Dyson's been a godsend defensively. It's just not even up for debate. And he was plus 10 in his minutes in 38 minutes. So whenever they were playing Trae Dyson together, things were great. And when they weren't, they weren't. And then Trae, 35 points, 13 assists, 3 turnovers, plus 14. He was 5 of 13 on 2, which is not great, but he got to the line 8 times, hit 6 threes. He was excellent, man. Like in the first quarter, he was not his best self in the first stint, but once he came back in, he was easily the best player on the court in this game. Cade was really good too for Detroit, but I thought Trae was just masterful, honestly, for most of this game. Defensively, obviously, it's picked on some, but I thought he was great, and that was borne out in the numbers. And not his fault they lost this game by any stretch of the imagination. All right, that's all I have on a relatively brief-ish breakdown of this game on a back-to-back on Friday into Saturday. But I will have even more on this on the team, of course, on Saturday. In fact, Hawks play the Bulls at home on Saturday. Some questions there. Number one is Hunter's status, which I referenced before. If he doesn't play Saturday, I think that we'll have to get, at least I'll be pushing even harder than I have been so far. Like, I can't imagine the Hawks not giving some sort of update on him after another missed game, but TBD on that on Saturday. Also, Okongwu has not played both ends of a back-to-back this year, and he played tonight. So we'll see if he plays tomorrow. That's a question, and so we see the injury report on Saturday afternoon. The Bulls are not a great team. They were, though, off today in Atlanta, so we'll see how that advantage sort of favors Chicago. And the Hawks played a lot of minutes in this game. Trae played 41 minutes, Dyson 38 minutes, Jalen 37 minutes, and they're short on the bench right now. So we'll see how that's all handled in the near future. But a game that is definitely going to be not necessarily an easy one for the Hawks, even against a team that they're better than, in my opinion. But it's a tough spot coming back home after the travel with the Bulls already in town. In fact, as I'm looking at my notes right now, the Hawks are a small favorite right now at FanDuel. They're a 2.5-point favorite over the Bulls as of midnight-ish on the East Coast on Friday into Saturday. That could change based on the injury report, but a game that the Hawks will be, at least on paper, more favored in than they were tonight when they were underdogs. But still, we'll see how they fare in that one, and I'll sign off for now. So please subscribe to this podcast anywhere you find your podcast. Please check us out on Apple and Spotify, as well as on YouTube. Please like this video as you're watching it on YouTube. I'll be back in my normal setup on Saturday evening into Sunday for a breakdown of that game against the Bulls. Please follow this show on social media. We are on Twitter /X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky, etc. And then follow my non-podcast work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Thanks for everybody. I do appreciate it. And please forgive the lack of audio quality as I am on the road here, obviously, post-game in Detroit. But back to normal tomorrow. Please stay tuned. Enjoy the rest of your weekend into Saturday and Sunday. And we'll see you all next time.